Hello, everybody, come on in and let's talk about the places where new fish begin to enter our hobby, fishery. So, guys, today we are doing a live talk. I felt like I haven't been able to travel lately. I haven't been able to, get around the country, Canada, Mexico, wherever, even Europe. I had a place to speak in Europe lined up as of a year and a half ago. And ever since my health went, boom, boom, I haven't been able to count on any of that or really even flying for that matter. And hopefully that will turn around really soon. But in the meantime, I just felt like I want to give a new talk, and I haven't written one in a while. So I wrote one the last few weeks and had been researching and wanted to share with you the 10 places right now that I think are the most prolific in uncovering new species of fish. Now, this list could easily have been 10 more places than what I'm listing, and the size is kind of arbitrary, but I kind of said in my head, like, if it's the size of France ish, the size of Texas maybe, or France somewhere in there, then that's probably like a big area, but not so big that it's like so broad that it's not even really saying a place, but yet confined enough that it tells you like, oh, the border between here and here, and 50 miles on either side uh, of that. So that is what our talk is going to be about today. So there'll be some maps, and I'll be talking about new fish that they have been finding in these places, but I will not be answering questions or comments. And I appreciate you guys so much for all the memberships, all the chatting, and the super thanks, and the likes and super chats, and all the things, the bells and whistles of the stuff. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I'm going to try to keep rolling so that we can kind of make this a presentation that you can sit through. And I'm also going to try to talk through this presentation so that it's podcast friendly, so that if you're in your car just cruising along, you'll enjoy it. Also, I wanted to make a new pledge, as I see someone saying, why did you use AI in your thumbnail? And it's because I am an artist and I would have illustrated this thumbnail normally or would have photoshopped it. But quite frankly, I tried putting it into the Chat GPT program, and it literally gave me almost identical to something that I would draw. Granted, it would have taken me probably 5 or 6 hours, and that could have been a whole side thing that maybe 1 or 2 people would have bought if I had prints of it or something. But really, I just wanted a cutesy idea to share a holding place. But in the long run, I never am going to be using AI as any form of script writing or any form of sourcing information, just because I've done plenty of episodes showing you guys how badly that can go. And as a person who is employed as a graphic designer and or tattoo artist and fine artist most of my adult life, since I was 17 or 18 really, and mural artist, I feel like if I want to use AI to create something that I could have created from scratch, and it gives me something close enough, like that would have been my rough draft, basically, of anything that I would have put forth with my name on it. Like I would have then sketched it. But if I can do that and create it for something that I just need as a placeholder for like a thumbnail, then so be it. But I also don't, like where they scrub their data and all that. And there's a bunch of ethical things. I think there's a bunch of good uses of AI too. But today we're not talking about that. I just wanted to let you know that I'll probably start doing, in my videos that never will there be voiceovers that are AI. The editing's not going to be AI. It's me. It's grumpy old me just doing my thing. So can you guys hear me okay? I hope you can. Testing 1, 2, 3. I guess the video will probably start around 5 minutes in if you're the one who wants to put video starts at, and really I'll probably be wrong, so it'll be like 5 minutes and 13 seconds or something. So if you want to do that, go ahead and do that. But let's fire up the old world map here, and yeah, it's it's like the map for world peas, where you get green goo whipped up in a little colander. World peas? No, nobody. Okay, bad joke. Anyways, you know what? Let's see here if we can get this. Come on, share screen. Yeah, here we go. Good computer. Let's hope this doesn't all come crashing down on us. Okay. All right. So we got the world around. So today we're going to be chatting about, and we're doing it live. We'll do it live. So if you don't have a fish club, pretend like I came to your town and hey, Jeff Kane, hey, Randall Ben, hey, Prodigal Aquarius, Diana, hey guys, welcome. I'm in town. I wanted to talk to you. Johnny Best, good to see you, brother. Carson, Axar, hello. Everybody, Fish Dad, I'm in your town, and we're doing this. We're doing it live. Robert, you as well. All right, so everybody get in. Let's start this talk about where and what are we finding in the fish hobby. All right, so basically when we're talking about new discoveries in the aquarium hobby, you can be looking all over the world, right? And there are places for fish to hide. You know, what would amaze you probably if you are not into taxonomy and things is that America, the United States of America, right here, the USA, we have some of the most diverse fish populations of anywhere in the world right here in the Alabama area. So in between the Mississippi River and then over to like the Cahaba and, all these rivers all throughout here. These are some incredible, really diverse waters. Like something like 600 fish can be found in the waters of these rivers in this region, rivers and lakes in this region, especially when you get into like the Alabama area, Tennessee as well, Kentucky, Mississippi, and then down into Florida here. Also, as you move over towards New Orleans over there as well in Mississippi, all of these big waterways have quite a few fish in them. And a lot of them are big, but there's a lot that are small. And we've kind of missed some of the smaller minnows and things. So if we're strictly speaking, now this isn't going to be our number 10 on the list. This is just letting you know that taxonomically speaking, they, for instance, came up with 2 new bowfins. So you may know of the bowfin, ancient, really beautiful fish. And they're really cool, but what turns out there's 2 species groups. There's a southern bowfin population and a northern one, and they're genetically different. Also, there are all sorts of sunfish. So while we know of the leposoma, all the different, everything from stuff that's like the pumpkin seed fish, Virga stuff, to like the green, dwarf green or pygmy green sunfish, to the spotted, like smaller stuff, sunfish wise, but then all the way over to the just the actual sunfish group, the panfish group. It turns out they added 6 more species to that. Same with like bass. Now there are a total of like 7 or 8 bass species here. And they're doing this with darters and all sorts of things. So if you want to get into this sort of technicality where they're species that we didn't know existed, this isn't necessarily a region that wasn't well documented. This is a region that's very well documented. And while we still will discover 1 or 2 new fish in a creek or something that were kind of overlooked or assumed to be something we knew about, a lot of the developed world, or that is, a lot of Europe, a lot of Asia, the Middle East, big metro areas in anywhere in the world really, but a lot of these regions and United States, Canada, Mexico, a lot of these fish are pretty well documented and known, even when they're in really rare like cave locations and things. But that is where we tend to find them, is either a taxonomical error where we didn't know that they occurred at all, and genetically we find that a fish like a minnow or something is absolutely not related to something it looks exactly similar to. So for instance, over here in Turkey and like Kazakhstan, over here in Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and northern Iran, this whole region right through here, in the Caucasus region also, and all the way up to the Bosphorus, all throughout Turkey this last 2 years, there's been a lot of expeditions where they're finding new fish. And they're finding all these like rugged little fish that look like dojo loaches and things all throughout the streams and valleys out here. And while the sheer number of species is not going to make our list today, I just want you guys to be aware that like there have been something like a dozen new species just listed in the loach group and in the catfish group in Turkey in the last couple of years, out of about 250 to 300 freshwater fish found each year, and another 100 or so that are found but not named each year, but enter the hobby or enter the scientific rounds, sort of like someone finds one in an import order for some sort of fish, be it food or be it ornamental. But let's kick off our actual list. I just wanted to talk about that, how we have a lot of new species. If you were to compile a list and you ask, for instance, AI to do the list, rather than someone who's a fish nerd expert, like I consider myself, you would end up with a list that probably figured, oh, who's got the most fish accounted for that have been published in scientific journals. Actually, it probably wouldn't even do that. It'd probably go to a magazine or a Reddit post online or forum posts and social media posts of like those social media shares on Facebook or TikTok or whatever. And it would probably read through things and decide, okay, this one's mentioned the most. So there's a cave fish that was found here. Well, it's going to see a lot of stories that are sensational about that, or about a gecko that's found over maybe an obscure fish in North America that's in some journal of like freshwater ecology in the Permian Basin or something, crazy specific like that, about the Midwest and the prairie states, drainage fields, and pupfish populations that are cut off from other fish. And like it may be that, yeah, we knew there were these fish in 15 different lakes. Turns out genetically, they're all completely separate. Like they're more separate than other fish out there. They may all look like little blue or gray killifish, but it turns out that some of them are separated by 15 million years. I'm making this up, but I'm just saying that's an example of like these pupfish that we find. Sometimes they're very, very isolated and different. Other times it turns out the whole population of all 15 lakes is really kind of just one species, and it's probably going to get grouped as such and then labeled as collection points. So this list kind of required some nuancing on my part on deciding, well, what really are these 10 places, if you look at all the facts, where we're truly finding fish that you could set next to each other and say, yeah, that's one, that fish can't mate with that fish. That is a new species. It is adapted to this environment, and we didn't know about it, and that is cool looking. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And with all that out of the way as formalities, let's jump right in. And I'm going to say some words that you might say, what? To? And yes, it's a location, and that is Bamako, Mali. Bamako, Mali. Okay, so let's zoom in on, you probably heard Mali. Well, there's another town that's you may have heard of, another city in Mali, Bamako or Bamako. And here it's on a big old river, the Niger River. And this river runs through somewhat populated region, but it runs all the way up in here. You get branches of it that go all the way up through like Timbuktu. And these are desert arid regions, but then it connects back down over here. It goes all the way. And here you can see that this Niger River starts to get really braided again and spread up. Well, then it kind of reaches these higher highlands and national parks, and the rain, it's not so deserty here. It's again more of a savanna and or even like flood area. And in this area, you then end up going all the way down here. Well, this is a big area that we just mentioned. So let me backtrack. But what I wanted to say is that, believe it or not, during the colonial days, we discovered quite a few fish in the 1850s to the 1910s period in a lot of port areas, and we'd go up these main rivers from the ocean, and we'd find, you'd send an expedition up for, say, 6 months and have them go nice and slow and have them net things and dynamite things and use local poisons and local trappers and things to catch as many specimens of as many critters as possible. Here, obviously, there's a massive diversity of fish, everything from there's tetras, and as you start getting closer to Central Africa, there's more and more. But as you get up into this kind of region up here, it's been very unstable for a long time. And in this transitional zone, where you get everything from Western Sahara, and these are big countries. So, I mean, I do want to make that clear. Like, here's Texas. This is a lot bigger than Texas, this area that we're going to start with. And that's just because it's number 10 on our list. But if you were to just start in this side of Guinea, a lot of these areas, a lot of these borders are literally just rivers. And they may have not even been navigable when they were chopped up by the European powers that chopped them up amongst themselves. And in the post-World War II years, I should say, they also, chopped it up more. But you get weird countries like the Gambia, which is basically a river basin that is a country within Senegal. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that, but that's very odd. Now, there are a lot of cool fish, and I have books of fish of Guinea-Bissau. I have fish of Senegal. I have a book of fish of Cameroon, which has like 800 and some fish in it. So there's all of these fish and a lot of fish diversity. Well, the whole problem with this region is that even though there's people here, it's near the equator. If we look at the equator, it cuts through right below where Africa kind of has this lobe hanging off here in the Gulf of Guinea. And basically, this whole region, it gets all the moisture and rain from the warm waters here that kind of circle with the Coriolis effect on the equator, and then it spirals off storms which come all the way across and actually end up raining on us here and bringing water to Alabama, of all places, where we have all those nice, wonderful fish and the diversity there. Well, a lot of the minerals and things like that, also ancient lakes used to exist out in these desert areas. In fact, there used to be a massive lake out here, the biggest lake in the world by fivefold, some people projected, in the Niger-Chad basin here, as well as the one in Libya, another one in Sudan, and then Algeria, Mali, and Niger in this corner too, again, right down in here. There were these massive lakes, and we find these lakes were there as recently as 5,000-6,000 years ago, with their peak being about 9,000 or 10,000 years ago. Now, these were lakes, but they were more like the current day floodlands of like the Okavango Delta, where you see things like these running kind of Everglade type waterways. And, I could have easily selected any of these regions in here too, where there just isn't enough known about some of the very obscure small fish, because the diversity is so high, visibility is low, and funding is low. That being said, there are a lot of European holdout and European places where explorers, naturalists, where it was a hot topic to go to a lot of places in Africa. So places like Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe tend to be overrepresented compared to those in some of these other regions where it's a little more desert and arid, like the Sahel region, which is kind of what we call this where it starts to get deserty here in Africa. And there's a lot of fish just waiting to be discovered that were cut off from these ancient lakes that came and went over and over the last 4 million years, with each ice age rising and then falling. you get the water levels rising and falling, the world's temperature rising and falling, and you get this rainforest belt. Basically, you get the safari belt going all the way up to Africa. In fact, there's populations of humans and all sorts of megafauna, from elephants to leopards and things, all the way up in Morocco, that were cut off for 700,000 years from all the other populations in sub-Saharan Africa and in Middle Eastern and what we would consider like the Sinai and the Red Sea. Well, the Red Sea also was a lot shallower and smaller when ocean levels were smaller, and it was a lot more lush around this area. So we don't even know what fish we've necessarily lost in some of the coastal regions that are subtle, like in Florida, for instance. We're missing, a good chunk of 50 miles out to sea, which could have had lakes and unique habitats that held fish, and that have just been washed away, and those fish evolved or didn't or whatever. But here we have people like Lawrence Kent that have explored this area, and I wanted to explain this first one on the list in pretty high detail, and we'll go faster on the next few, but we'll kind of tackle some of the different issues that pop up amongst, like, why is it we find so many fish some places and why don't we in others, and like what necessitates going to a place and looking for fish in the first place, and what gives us the idea versus what gives us the funding and the reason to go do it. Obviously, a place with lots of tourism dollars or lots of money from an industry, for instance, like if it's got a lot of foreign investment, a lot of times what will happen is you'll get foreign investment in a place like, for instance, Nigeria. It's a very wealthy country, relatively speaking, in Africa, but it's got a ton of people too, but it's also got a lot of foreign investment. And so the fish here are actually pretty well known. There's such a diversity sitting right on the equator that there's probably a lot hiding under our noses, but there are so many like foreign entities and experts and fish hobbyists, enthusiasts, sporting fishermen as well, that come to places all around the world, and want to fish wherever they go. And so they bring back this info, as well as the scientific community bring back this info to what ends up being the hub of Europe and America, kind of, especially early in the 1800s and turn of the 19th to the 20th century. All our taxonomical stuff is kind of coming out of, Western and Central Europe, essentially. UK, America, I guess you can include with Canada and the United States as well, and a little bit out of Mexico too at the time, a little bit out of Brazil at the time, and a bit out of South Africa and Australia, all kind of chiming in, and India as well. So there's that. But let's go to our number 9 spot on the list after our transitional zone here in Bamako, Mali, and this Sahel region, all along this scattered border with Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, Liberia. There are so many beautiful, whether it's the rocket killifish that we call clown killifish, I hate that name, or whether it's the annual killifish. There are so many killifish alone in these few countries that I'm sure we don't even have half of them. I mean, I would be willing to bet. And as you go along these transitional zones, you have to remember, like I was saying, that there was all that water up here, and fish used to continue all the way up into here, and the lush rivers and things actually do still arch all the way up and around, and before they gather the rainfall again and get really big. And we'll come back to this area where really the diversity is off the charts here, and the remoteness of things goes up a whole nother level. But for now, let's continue our trip with number 9 out of 10. And we almost passed it here, but we're down here. And if you want to know our whereabouts, we're looking at this big old funny island. Yeah, it's Borneo. It's got 3 countries in one. It's got Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei. The Kingdom of Brunei alone these two little funky, I guess, enclaves, exclaves, whatever you want to call them, enclaves. They have, for instance, several betta species known to exist just in these locations. But we are seeing a massive development of this whole area. This island is massive. So, I mean, not just so people can kind of understand what we're looking at. It's almost the size of Texas, this island. I mean, look at this thing. It's massive. Like, here's Indonesia on the map, all these islands and things. And Java is big too, you know. But Papua New Guinea and Borneo are like dang near, you know, Montana or, you know, Nevada-sized states in the U.S. if you need something for comparison. If you're thinking of size, I mean, we're talking bigger than Ireland. We're talking approximately the size of, like, you know, Spain or something almost, with Papua New Guinea and Borneo. So here we know that there are an incredible wealth of fish. We've seen all those incredible loaches with the blue tails, the red tails, the tiger stripes, the dots. We've seen all those gastromyzon species coming out of these mountains here. And right now we're seeing like never before. In fact, you can see it here. I bet we can see it if we go to satellite mode. If we go to satellite mode, well, we don't need street. We don't need street view. We need satellite. Why is it? Hold on, guys. Let me try to figure out why. Oh, here we go. It's got layers. Let's do terrain, transit, traffic, biking, more. Here we go. Satellite. There we go. Okay, so when we're looking at satellite over these regions, this gives you a better idea of. So when I say Borneo, like, you might say, oh, this is just one island. Yeah, it's freaking huge, guys. Like we just established, it's freaking huge. And this island, you've got everywhere from Sarawak, all this region in here that's Malay, and then you got Brunei, and then you got all the Indonesian part that's over here and up into here. And East Kalimantan has an interesting array of fish. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that the fish here and the fish in Sulawesi has another place where there are countless fish that we've yet to find, but people are looking there definitely because it is an ancient high point in these islands, and we're now finding like ancient hominid remains that are over 1 million years old out here, that are not direct human descendants, but rather distant cousins, and some more direct cousins from around 50 to 80,000 years ago, which were probably on their way to Australia. But nevertheless, if you look here, there's a thing called the Wallace line, and it's a made-up line basically that says everything to the left of the Philippines and Sulawesi and North Sulawesi and all these big islands here. So you've got the Sunda Islands, you've also got Sumatra, and then you've got Java, of course, too. And then you've also got Timor and East Timor. But all that stuff has mammals and animals that are from the continental side of things. So all the fish tend to be stuff that's over here. Whereas everything that's further out, so in Papua New Guinea, on these weird little islands like the Aru Islands and some of these other like very like Aru Islands here, very specific small. I mean, they're not tiny as an island for the sake of an island, but it's tiny for a spot to have 5 or 6 unique fish species, right? And out here, this is all stuff that evolved together with all the Australian continental stuff. And there are lakes that are 16 million years old in this ancient lake region here. And we'll talk about that more in another episode. But Borneo, what I was going to say, by looking, you can see what a green mass is Borneo. I mean, Borneo is just thick, and very, very mountainous. I mean, very mountainous to the point where no one knows where these borderlines are. And the creeks and streams. Look at all these creeks and streams and ridge tops and mount. I mean, all those are places where hill stream creatures are going to be living. Everything from little rasboras and loaches to, I mean, large fish like gouramis and catfish and things like that are also found over there, as well as things like half beaks and all sorts of little rice fish and things like that. Um, Top minnows, interesting fish like that. But there aren't really many rainbow fish or anything like that in on this island. So that leaves out them, and they still have a long way to go in just exploring that. But right now, China is really what's pushing Borneo's development. And you'll find that regions like right in here that used to be very, very remote are getting investments via Indonesia and Malaysia through Chinese companies, mining deals, as well as logging and development for palm oil, as well as other things, cattle ranching, you name it. That stuff's still going on, and they're taking a lot of the island every year. So it needs to be saved for sure. But it is still one of the places where we might even find large mammals there. We don't know. I mean, there's literally rhinos on these islands that evolved and stayed out here until very recently. Like just recently, in the last 20 or 30 years, we're starting to lose kind of the last of them. Some of them are being held in breeding populations, but that's a different story for another day. All right, so at 8 on our list, getting faster. Alex has been talking too much in the first few. So number 8 on our list, we come to the South Colombian region that has now recently been opened in the nation of Colombia. Now, Cali and like the Cali, as it's known in America, we know that this is a big city, and it was a big trade center for illegal activities. And this was kind of the furthest extent you could go in, in Colombia for a lot of the 1960s and 70s. You could go to kind of everywhere north of Cali, and Bogota was okay, or until Pablo came along. Then nowhere was safe, obviously. But even in the time since then, you've got groups like the FARC and the ELN that really controlled, I mean, almost this entire these border states here, and on the Ecuadorian side here. And today they still control a lot of this land. But now that the FARC has put down their arms, essentially, and actually seems to be holding to that for a good 5 or 6 years, we've seen that some of these rivers in here have been opened back up to exploration, or at least, countries are willing to send exploration teams, and they're not just thinking, oh man, this is hopeless, they're just going to get kidnapped and ransomed, and it's just not good news, right? Well, believe it or not, there is no road that connects North and South America. Even though you can drive across Panama, you're better off with a boat. This area here, called the Darien Gap or Darien National Park, on both sides here, you've got such thick jungle and such unstable roads between basically 2 massive mountain ranges, or almost 3, and such unpredictable, crazy weather, as well as crazy politics over the years, that it just never been developed. There's not even a highway, like a 2-lane highway that you can take, not even a dirt highway you can take to connect these places. You have to get out on foot. Now, people have they did make a road back in the 20s to get a car through, and again, people have done off-roading stunts, but with like Range Rovers and literally making a road as they go with expeditions. But this is a remote area, and today it is still controlled by La Familia and ELN groups, and kind of it's being tolerated that they're controlling what comes out of the mountains of Colombia and Peru and Ecuador and Bolivia. That snow, this is kind of it all leaves here or up on the other side, headed over to Europe, and usually it heads, if things are taking that route, they'll either go through Colombia, Venezuela, or Brazil, and then they usually will end up in Nigeria or the other place that they tend to end up sometime is where did it go? Sierra Leone is another hot spot too, and then they take that up to here and then to Spain or to Italy and take it across there, and then they distribute all those illegal things up through the rest of Europe that way. Or now they're also going directly across Colombia and connecting places like Papua New Guinea, believe it or not, and the Philippines into this trade. Now it's kind of a small world after all thing, but and you might think, oh, it's illegal business. Like, what does that, what does it matter or whatever? But in a lot of these communities, that is kind of what pays for the guys making these illegal submersibles. The guys who are there may be some ecotourism. There may be an interest from the northern part of the country and from universities and kind of more stable, safe, academic-minded folks. And Colombia is a very nice country now, from all I hear. But there is still that past there, and that past is recent enough that it really did prevent exploration until very recently. Nobody was going to send teams of people with little beakers and vials and stuff that looked expensive, mass spectrometers or water detection gear, to these regions. And this comes up again, also, we didn't mention a ton, but in Africa, this comes up a lot, where you end up seeing Boko Haram. And, you've also got like the ISIS, the African version, and few other groups that have kind of ragtag terrible people. You also get the when you get over here, there could be some really incredible fish and things in Ethiopia, and Ethiopia has its stable regions, but it also has its very remote regions that are very tribal, and there may only be one or two unique fish out there, but there's probably still regions all over Africa, all over South America, basically anywhere equatorial. We know this about India too. There's no shortage of people here, but there are regions that are just, there just aren't always a ton of roads through every section of every area. And it kind of makes the world, especially when you get mountains or rivers involved, it makes places like these Western Ghat Mountains in India, which aren't on the list today, but I wanted to give them a shout out. There, also down in Sri Lanka, we find that there's fish species still being discovered here on yet again another island that we would consider, a small island, smaller than Borneo or Papua New Guinea for sure. And Madagascar, same thing, southern Madagascar. Those are all places that I would give shout outs to on our list, but they're a little more sporadic. Also, out here, this part of Brazil, like the state of Bahia, there's probably lots of interesting fish also up here. We know the Guianan Shield, as you get up into Suriname, Guyana, French Guiana, that could have been one of my listed regions, Venezuelan border area, the state of Roraima, and Manaus, big Amazon city, and then Belém in Brazil. Some of these areas have been explored, but it's just a massive river. We're talking, there's no other rivers, with the exception of like the Congo, the Mississippi, and the Yellow, maybe the Ganges and the Yangtze. There's just no other rivers in the world that come anywhere close to the volume. And flooded forests, there's an entire area up here that has flooded sand dunes, that this is water in these sand dunes for hundreds of miles. And those are all tiny lakes, because the continental shelf here is flooded. But it's not saltwater, it's freshwater inland. Brackish when you get near the coast, and then, full salt and sometimes even hypersaline once you get right to the coast. But there's some really interesting little, micro habitats that could easily be holding 20, 30, 40 species. We've seen this in Africa before, like Lake Kivu, where we saw 14 species of cichlids described there just a few years ago. And that can just pop up some of these places. So I just want to give a shout out to there. Also kind of as we continue our list, we'll mention a few of those little spots again. But let's keep it moving, and let's talk about number 7 on our list, which is nice and right here for us. But really, the border of when you're looking at the border of Bolivia and Paraguay here. Now, there are big cities up in the heart of Bolivia. There are kind of, I guess, settlement and exploration kind of follows the mountains and where the water and the rivers are here. And there's the Andes Mountains, and you kind of have two separate states big time. You got La Paz, which is the big Incan Empire tied. There's all the very ancient, very advanced civilizations throughout Chile and Bolivia and Peru. But also in this region right in here, kind of where the forest meets the like for instance, down here, those super cherry red tetras that people have been seeing, some of them came from over in here. We also, if you're thinking of like the heart of the Amazon, that's more up here where we get most of our fish. But this is a huge area. I mean, we're talking right now, this little scroll bar right here is 500 miles. The legend right here is 500 miles, meaning that basically it's saying that from Bolivia right here is about 500 miles across alone. So, I mean, this is 250 miles from Santa Cruz just to the Brazilian border. And in this region, you get really interesting stuff. Like you get these kind of more temperate and farming communities in here that were established, and they've been kind of poor farming communities for a long time. But nobody's really done a big exploration of the waterways like they have for a lot of the tropical regions. And now they're learning that there are actually quite a diversity of fish creeping from the groups of fish that we would expect to see all the way in the Amazon. And, there are fish that are related to groups of fish that are from all the way up here that we're finding all the way down in here. And we're finding corridoras and things all the way, down towards, this southern side of Brazil. And it's definitely worth exploring. Definitely there's some talk too in southern Peru of there being a live bear or two, possibly, that are actually on the Pacific side of the Andes, which if Heiko Blair is correct, he said that before he passed away. Said there were some in the south here. That's pretty interesting. One of the highest lakes in the world that has fish in it all the way up here, including some unique fish. I wouldn't say that these cold mountainous regions are like prime suspects for lake fish or river fish or whatnot. But these hill streams, boy, if we know one thing, it's that hill streams bring both, big seasonal changes, and all these little fingers here of mountains have little streams and creeks in them, at least part of the year, if not all of the year, and in the big valleys all year. And these places, even where it's a little more arid, a lot of these places have really interesting ecosystems. Same with like the Pantanal, where it's a little more like, it looks like the Serengeti, or kind of like an African scene that you would expect to see when you go out into these regions. And yet it is still holding some of the same little fish that you would probably just, if you didn't know better, you just say, oh, it's a tetra. It's from it's from Brazil, so that's got to be from the Amazon, right? It's all the same thing, right? Well, no, it's massive, absolutely massive. And while a lot of the waterway is connected all the way from Peru all the way to the coast, it also is a little disjointed as you get farther south. And I think that that makes for a really interesting place where they're finding a lot of stuff. So they're finding a lot of stuff right up on the Ecuadorian border where they're doing new exploration in Bolivia, Paraguay, Chile, and Peru, which I know that's too big of an area to call one area, but really all the Andean Amazon is ripe for exploration. Especially, there were also groups known as like the Shining Path in Peru that at various times, communist or far right at other times, if you look in other countries, either communist or far right or fascist or whatever dictatorship type groups, sometimes narco groups, also controlled a lot of remote regions in that area as well, and it just wasn't stable. There were a lot of bandits and things like that in some areas, and now we're seeing the world connecting more than ever, and that not really being able to happen, where they're still running their kind of clan as its own country in their valleys and things. That the kind of world is opened up to that too much, although it does continue for some, probably will for another few decades. So number 6 on our list is going to be right here in the heart of Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo. What a fun name. Nothing really stable or democratic or Republican about Congo. It is notoriously unstable. It has a ton of people. I mean, we're talking like 100 million people or something. It's huge. I mean, again, if we're comparing it to Texas, it fits like what, 3 or 4 Texases in it. And this, just the Congo River alone has not been evaluated. There is the mouth of the Congo River, if we look right over here. So there's also the Republic of Congo, which is a country, and then the Democratic Republic of Congo, right? And some of the borders aren't even clear here, just so you don't feel bad if you didn't know that. But yeah, there's like this river border region here. Look at this. Look how braided this is and flooded. So there's still fish being discovered here. And there's a part of the Congo River right over here, before Kinshasa even, that's like 900 feet deep. 900 feet deep. The deepest river in the world, 700 to 900 feet deep in stretches. And they're finding fish that live down there that, like, their bodies didn't really come up. Fishermen didn't really fish for them. But there's like interesting relatives of skates and rays and also kind of like catfish or loach or flounder and sole type fish that are, probably entered, evolutionarily speaking, from the Atlantic here. But the Congo River has been around for a long time. Now, the Congo River and the Amazon River are both ancient rivers, and you may not know this, but plate tectonics, you can see where South America kind of nests perfectly into Africa here if you scooted them together. Well, they used to be together, and just like the Appalachian Mountains and the United Kingdom used to kind of all be crammed together with the Pyrenees and here with like Spain and stuff on the coast. There are existing here in the Appalachian Mountains, there are rock formations that stop here and all of a sudden pick back up in the United Kingdom. Well, this is like a zipper all the way down the continent where we see the same thing. We see rock in Suriname, we see rock in Brazil, and it fits perfectly with the rock we see over here, and it's split over time, and you get the Atlantic mid-sea rifts right here. These are big gouges in the sea where things are splitting apart and filling with lava as they drift apart. And you can see them here, like, again, like a zipper or a crack forming. And that cracking apart actually continues through the continent of Africa. And you've got this shelf here, continental chunk of the Horn of Africa that's also pulling away still. And so that's why we get these massive lakes here these rift lakes, Malawi and then Tanganyika, and you've also got Victoria, which is not technically this is not technically a rift lake. It's pretty shallow lake, whereas Tanganyika and Malawi are deep lakes, with probably 3 or 4 cichlid species entered. I have whole videos on this if you're interested, but we talk about how 70 million years ago to 90 million years ago, the split apart of Africa and South America occurred. If you go back all the way to 100 million years ago, the Amazon and the Congo were the same river. Let me repeat that. The two biggest rivers in the world essentially were one river that was way bigger than any river that's ever existed since or before that we know of. And it was some massive, like 8,000 mile long river, they believe. You can look it up, the ancient Proto-Congo Amazonian River, or Amazonian Congo, Proto-Amazonian Congo River, but archaic or ancient river. Look that up. Fascinating stuff, but it's why, like, Corydorus and, for instance, the other, like, you got to go all the way back 60, 70, 80 million years to Corydorus and, like, the squeaker catfish and things like Peclotia and the, like, cuckoo catfish and all that kind of stuff. You have to go all the way back to those similar small catfish and armored catfish when you're looking for a common ancestor. They've been apart a long time. Now, we don't know if the cichlids split up all the way back then, or if they had a common ancestor that swam between the two. But any way you look at it, a lot of fish came from the sea and worked their way back in over time. So you get fish that start out as both fresh and saltwater evolutionarily, or just saltwater, and then they go to fresh, and then they get stuck somehow in freshwater and stay there, and then from there they evolve more. And in the case of the rift lakes, which are well documented, undoubtedly there's more going on there. There's more species that are not documented here, but just in these Lake Tanganyika, Lake Malawi, and Lake Victoria, these 3 lakes here, you have something like 1,800 species of diversity. And if you looked in the DRC, looking through the deep Congo, there undoubtedly, the Volta River, the Congo River, these areas are undoubtedly, I mean, this is a satellite map. You are seeing cities here. Oh, wait, you're not. Yeah, there's no cities here. There's nothing here, guys. There's rivers. There's place names, and like a city here, Kinshasa is, well, that's not Kinshasa, but this is a place. Wait, is that? I might be mistaken, guys. Hold on one sec. I'm confused as to why that showed. Oh, oh, no. There we go. There's Kinshasa. There's the capital. I was like, that's not right. Like, apparently there's 2 places called this. One in the middle of nowhere, and that said it had a hospital. I think it's just not placed correctly. But, like, their capital cities, a huge place, big sprawling place. But that's over here, again, all the way over here, by the edge of the country and by the mouth of the river. When you get in here, there are a few cities of note, but really it's a lot of tribal lands and a lot of groups that are run by ethnic factions. Even still, nomadic groups can be found in the heart of Africa, although less and less every year. Okay, let me just I just want to make sure that the stream is still going good. Okay, I hope we're doing good, and I'm going to continue on. We are at number 5 in our countdown. Welcome if you have a fish club nearby and I couldn't make it to a talk. Well, here's a talk for you now. And hopefully, what I'm thinking about doing in the future is going over the fish found in the last 4 or 5 years and maybe editing pictures of them over this talk for y'all. Or, you know, if somebody else wanted to do that, boy, that would make my life easier. Uh, just kidding. No, that's the goal. So where are we going next? Well, it seemed pretty obvious while we were over here, right? But Papua New Guinea. And that's going to include all these weird little islands. New Britain, I mean, Bougainville Island, all the way over to, you know, the Aru Islands and Maluku. And again, everything on this side of this deep ocean trench right here, the Banda Sea, everything gets divided basically along this line called the Wallace Line. There's two lines. There's the Wallace Line, and then there's another line, and I'm totally spacing on its name. But basically, they're evolutionary lines that meant that even when the glaciers were at their maximum and the sea was 312 feet lower than it currently is, and this was all connected to the mainland. Well, a lot of this was like all of these islands here, this whole peninsula all the way down to here was connected to the mainland, all the way up into here. And a lot of areas today that look separated by something like 20 miles from here to here, back then may have only been separated by 10 miles or 8 miles. And you can kind of see some of the trenches that occur on this Google map, which is nice, that make it so that, yeah, anything out here, like you're not going to get anything other than maybe a Stiphodon or some little goby that tried to make it out there that got lost, right? Whereas anything in here, you've got crazy diversity of the creatures and even the rivers that were part of the freshwater country or continent rather. And this is the Sunda region. You can see it here, the whole light colored sea here, that lighter blue, that was all connected. Well, right here again to Australia, where we're at now, in Papua New Guinea. Again, Papua New Guinea is an island, but there's the half that is Indonesia's, and then there's also a half that is its own country. It's an independent country. And this independent country of Papua New Guinea is pretty much unexplored in the mountains for fish up here extensively. You get people like Chris Lukoff going and doing some well-funded kind of like with the camera, getting a ride somewhere to like Port Moresby and then maybe going 100 miles or catching a plane to some other river or something and sharing incredible pictures. Every time he comes back with dozens of new crayfish. But I mean, look at all these rivers here. This is where all your rainbow fish come from, basically. This island here and the northern part of Australia for the most part. I mean, really the whole north of Australia, even kind of around to the side here. But up in here, I mean, we've got just in rainbow fish alone, but there's also loaches, there's also rice fish, there's also little danios, and well, they're small, like danionellas. There's also similar to rasboras, like the Sunda danio type stuff, but they're not true rasboras. The true rasboras are all actually over on this side of things already. But this area really is a no man's land. There are places that people have never been, that humans have never been probably here. Some of these mountain valleys and things, you get 14,000 foot, you know. I mean, we're talking like 5 or 6, probably 5,000 meters, 15,000 feet at the highest points. Mountains here in the central spine of the country, and they're not just one, they're like a range and tropical jungles within snow and even in some cases glaciers and things. But now what I want to show you that's so sad is this. Look at this. This is a mine, and here you can see Alpes Camp. You can see, I mean, you can explore these places on your own. There's a Lutheran church. Here's a Revival Church. Here's a hospital. I mean, this is a giant industrial complex to strip mine this mountain. Here's a Seventh Day Adventist church. You also get like a Mormon church. All these churches from the West are here, and it's because all these foreign mining companies and things have been a hub for Westerners in general. But also when you bring in 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 skilled laborers from Asia, people who know hydraulics, who know heavy machinery, who know blasting, who know geology, who are doing mining and chemistry and refining on site. Also, and they're able to get to these crazy remote areas. They are the ones who are putting in these roads. They're the ones who are cutting, swaths of these forests away and not caring. I mean, look at this massive scar on the land. They took out entire mountains, and they leave behind in this area something much worse than just palm oil plantations and things like you see in other parts of Southeast Asia. You actually see in the mining regions. I mean, it looks as bad as a actual mountaintop that is just bare bedrock exposed to the weather. And it looks that bad in a lot of places where humans have done their deeds. And so there are places where also I want to mention a lot of massacres have occurred here of the natives. And then they say, oh, no one's living there. But it is so uncharted that news doesn't get out. Even today with cell phones and things, only now with solar charging and tech getting so affordable so that some of these tribes can afford them. If someone in the tribe maybe also works at the mine doing like manual labor and getting paid some very small amount. But the problem is a lot of these mining companies, whether they're American, whether they're Chinese, a lot of them are Chinese, a lot of them are Canadian, a lot of them are American. There's Dutch also, there's Taiwanese. But a lot of them don't follow any of the labor practices. They don't follow any of the environmental practices that the West would follow or that they would be required to follow. And that is why they're, one of the reasons why they're coming here, beyond it also being rich in minerals, is because nobody's really looking over their back, much like a lot of Africa and like South America used to be much more like that as well. But here you get some massive rivers too. And again, that's where a lot of the main cities are going to be based. But also the Fly River right here, where you get the Fly River turtles and stuff. Really interesting, fascinating stuff evolves out there. Really, it is a lost world. It is basically an island on an island on an island when you look at like the lakes within the mountains and the valleys of such a remote place. It's really, really wild. Yeah. So the next place on our list is going to be right in the Western Ghats region. I said it wasn't on our list. I lied. The Western Ghats is specifically. I shouldn't have given that away. I should have. But this whole mountain range, even though India has more people than China now, I believe, right? This green on the map is so lush. And let's zoom out so we can see the, hold on, let's go back to terrain. The equator, right here. Equator, so we're well north of the equator, but we're still very tropical here in India. And also we got that continental climate, but we also have the moisture of all the wet seasons here. And here you get all sorts of interesting stuff like those little micro crabs. There's over 250 species, like something like 40 species were discovered in the last 2 years just in these three parks right here. Really cool. But this whole mountainous edge of India here, from this southern cluster to up in here, is all it's been explored by both colonial visitors from Europe, Also, up here, Goa, this was Portuguese at one point. And a lot of the world has come through here and traded. Arabs have had trade ports here and things. Obviously, the British controlled all of Pakistan, Afghanistan, most of Iran, and you know, Bangladesh, Assam, which this is part of India too, if you didn't notice, guys. This triangle here, Assam, and Nagaland and Manipur. But also Myanmar was Burma too, right? I mean, the British controlled like all of this Indian subcontinent. Now that we think of not as India, but this used to be quote unquote India, all of this, and has now been, divvied up, obviously. But now you have Bangladesh as a separate country, Pakistan, Afghanistan, still fighting over things up here, over who's what. But this is a big area to go look for things in, right? And Kerala is a very big city, popular area, and all that down here in India. And again, you get these kind of interesting intersecting regions where there's coastal trade that goes back to ancient times. But once you get inland and kind of over the mountains, the backside of the mountains, especially where they get the monsoon rain is kind of wrung out, and you kind of get this dry valley. And then from this side, they get rain also. But this whole country runs on monsoons, basically, just like Bangladesh and things too. And I could have picked several regions of India, but really this one is one where there seems to be money to explore. And there seems to be teams going into these parks and wanting to document what they have before uncontrolled agriculture. And in this case, it's not warfare, it's not warlords or crazy mining, but more industrial pollution as suburbs creep, and things that were right under their nose and may have had a name locally, like barbs and batis and danios and little cyprinids, just minnow-like fish that maybe didn't have a Latin name beyond a genus, and they were kind of just put in a group, and then they said, let's get to these later. Like Pethia are a great example, like the banded barbs of Asia, where you get like the 8-banded barb and the 6-banded barb, and Pethia gellus, Pethia aurantus, Pethia serratus, all those. And they look very, very similar, but they're different species. And they all have little subtle differences in how they evolved. And, one might be have a mouth that's angled upwards so that it can eat insects predominantly. And it may have evolved a gut biome and organs and everything just for feeding on, flooded grasslands and eating those insects that are living in these flooded areas. Whereas on the other side, especially when you get mountains involved of an ancient continent, this is another spot where you get these micro ecosystems and regions. And they have dammed a lot of things for power also, but that's also kind of created more habitat for the creatures that did live there to spread out. So they may have been killed with competition and environment that they weren't used to when a giant lake takes over their little hill stream or their creek. But in the same breath, a lot of this region flooded historically due to the monsoons. And so it's still, like, you can see all the water in here. And with these reservoirs, now checking the creeks and things that flow into them, there are unique species in a lot of this green area here. So there's the money to explore, and there's also a sense of, you know what, I think we missed some of this stuff the first time. And it's not going to be on our list today, but Thailand and Bangkok is a place where we thought, that is a massive hub of selling fish. Even Singapore, which is a city state, that's a place where shrimp and fish and, right on the tip of Malaysia. I mean, look at this thing. It's like So tiny. It's not even, look at this, guys. It's not even 10 miles across. And yet there are shrimp species that were being cataloged and described. That's because there's a lot of money in Singapore. There's a lot of aquarium money also. But just to show you that if you look hard enough with enough scientists, even in a small area near the equator like this, you will find a new species, especially something as small as a shrimp or a little nano fish. I mean, so there's a lot of possibilities, even in like these big urban areas where all the fish that are over 2 or 3 inches may have names, but it may have not occurred of anybody to name the little nano fish. And they may have fascinating things like the Danionellas that we see, that have fascinating properties. Like one doesn't have a skull cover. It has no cartilage over its brain or no skeletal cap of any sort over it. And we can actually use genetic sequencing and things, as well as genetic modification with using fluorescence and tissues like in glowfish. But we can do that with cancer tissue only, so that if there is a certain neurological tissue type that we want to examine, or just we want to see how brain cancer evolves, you don't have to cut open the fish. You can watch it living. And so they figured out that same gene that controls that in the Danios. Now they can do that with zebra Danios because they found a wild relative that had already evolved that ability to not develop its skull or cartilaginous flap skull, whatever you want to call it. It's bony skull. But this could mean big things for humans too. And so there is hope in that some of these new discoveries, some of these new species, we might unlock, whether it's, it could be something as crazy as torpedoes and stealth technology, which we've borrowed so much from nature. Pretty much everything we do is breaking barriers and boundaries in the world. Every cutting edge thing kind of harkens back to studying nature now, and then trying to replicate it with an analog using something synthetic or man-made, or a system that's man-made and controlled, and then seeing how close we can get to that biological thing. And then the gap in between the two, that's where all of the technological excitement is going on. Like right now across the entire world, it's very, very moving. And if we lose these species, you might say, who cares about the fish? Like, for instance, if you know what the Somphong rasbora is, that fish was thought to be extinct, but now it's known to exist. I'm not going to say where, but it's known to exist somewhere in this general region within an hour of Bangkok, in farmlands that have industrial pollutants from like way too much fertilizer and things like that, pesticides, and even industrial like sewage runoff and things in some cases. Yet right in like the glow of seeing the city still, they have found them in the wild again. But beyond that, the Somphong rasbora is a fascinating fish. I have a talk on them on my channel as well. But they talk about how they thought they were extinct in the 70s. They used to be very common in the fish hobby, and then they just couldn't find them anymore because they had totally wrecked this Chao Phraya River. It runs right through Bangkok, ecologically speaking. Same over here with this one. The Thai, I'm going to say it wrong, Thai Chin or Thai Chin River. And, these are very fertile areas, but we overlook things that we think are ruined sometimes that aren't. And when we've got the money, the know-how, we can find them again sometimes just by going and looking. Like, just the same is going to be true with a lot of big Asian cities that have popped up over the last 50 years or so, that they never got a thorough go around for the tiny fish, for the oddball fish that maybe there's something like it and they knew that it was kind of a subspecies, but they put it away. As we do things like digitize archives within countries and we translate to international databases, we find places like Cambodia or Laos that may have had British rule for a while and then an independent rule, or maybe the Japanese came in for a couple of years, the Chinese come in for a couple of years, ethnic groups run for a couple of years, archives get ruined, everyone thinks they're gone. Well, then it turns out, oh, somebody's got from 1870 to 1890 saved, and we get it digitized. And it's projects like that Ivan Mikolji and I will give a plug to our Green Earth Alliance, that we're excited about and that we want to do in places like Venezuela, places where there are jars that are 150 years old from when these Orinoco explorations first occurred, when they first went all the way to track down this border, basically, and make up this border between Venezuela and Colombia and Brazil. And this whole region is actually kind of sketchy border-wise. You can end up crossing the border and not realizing it some years just from river being too high. But anyways, these regions, they're traveled like a highway because of how massive these rivers are and things. But beyond these main rivers, once you get to anything that is geologically unique, like a mountain range or a valley, once you get out of the main river valley of whether it's the Amazon here, which is massive. I mean, we're talking, this is big enough that it has like 3,000 to 4,000 species of freshwater fish and subspecies right here alone in the main river forks and offshoots. But then when you look closer and you count places like up in here, like the Guianan Shield, and you realize like, oh, there's geophagus, there's earth eaters, there's top minnows and seasonal and annual killifish, and there's these weird like swamp eels, and there's just these interesting oddball fish that pop up places where we see that. So both where we see extreme geology or ancient geology and these cities that have had control from colonial rule, then to self-rule, and then maybe another colonial or another empire rule or chaos. When we digitize, that's kind of the next chapter that we will discover, I'm guessing, probably another like 10% of fish that we didn't think we had described are just waiting to be described, but nobody's digitized some northern, whatever it is, former USSR province, and maybe there was one fish guy who worked, all of northern Kyrgyzstan for 30 or 40 years, and everything lied with him. And if nobody really cared like about other than fish stocks that were food or really massive like commodities and things. There might be one or two people in a lot of cases that knew like everything about the biodiversity of certain oddball places. So those places may pop up and surprise us still and not be anything I mentioned on the list, but I just had to say that. Now, number 3, we're coming to the home stretch, the big 3. So number 3, we've got Southeast China, and I'm going to call this separate from another region that's going to be in our top 3, but I'm talking more Henan over here and all the way over to Fujian and these super cities that are here, these massive, like, again, 50 million people, 100 million people in these areas, biggest cities in the world. In the areas that connect them, though, they get overlooked, and also right in the suburbs, there might be species that are overlooked. I mean, there are videos out about some of the hill stream species and some of the interesting little gobies and things that are found literally, right by Shenzhen, which is a massive city. I mean, one of the biggest cities in the world. And yet, you know, there's a lot of water here. They get a lot of rain here, and it's, again, it's not right on the equator, but it's not far. It's close enough, as they say. And you know, in Asia, the equatorial band is a little raised a little higher for inland because of that continental warmth. I mean, you also get tropical to subtropical temperatures all the way to, you know, up to about Taiwan, and then you've got the mountains up in central Asia here with like Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, that it is a massive wall. And yes, they have been discovering some fish up here as well, but they're kind of like loaches, eels, catfish, things that surprisingly some of them aren't small either. Some are like some new carp. There's been a number of new things they found. But what I wanted to bring up about the stuff that's being found down here is that China, one, is going back with a real sense of expertise and pride, and they're discovering what is in all these places that could have gotten overlooked, that maybe the locals had a name for it. And with Mao's Cultural Revolution, with all the strife of the lost century, or the century of shame, as they sometimes call the 1800 to 1907, whatever, or even more like 1890s. But anyways, they kind of saw that as the fall from grace, and that's the time when a lot of things were getting mapped. So if it wasn't of interest to the colonial powers, or it wasn't a commodity or a foodstuffs, then that fish may not have been recorded, and it may have been fished out. I mean, we see things on the massive rivers of China, the Yangtze and the Pearl, and you know, you see things like the river dolphins and the alligators and paddlefish and things going completely extinct. But the diversity was there, and in some cases still very much is there. And some of these rivers are really, really massive still. Zhejiang River, another massive one. And these regions are really beautiful too. If you ever have time on Google, this southeastern China, all the way up to here, which I realize that's like, this is a good Texas-sized chunk right here, right? Yunnan province in particular, right in here. Just take that. I mean, that's not quite Texas size, but if you put Guangzhou and Hunan and Yunnan province together, that's your Texas size chunk. But as you get into these areas too, I mean, there are incredibly beautiful waterfalls, and just why are we not seeing? Oh yeah, these incredibly, like, I mean, is it alpine? Is it temperate? Is it tropical? Yeah, it's a very interesting region because of how much elevation and then the climate impact everything. But all over China, you can go on Google Maps, and fortunately, I mean, you can go, even if it's just like you can go and click on where people have uploaded pictures from, you know, and just get a sense for what's there. No, okay. Usually you can. I don't know why I'm striking out with all these pictures, but you can also see that, yeah, this is 6,000 feet in elevation up here. But what I wanted to show you is like here. We'll take a brief aside, and we'll go to Yunnan, China. And I think, let's see here, can we, I mean, look at these mountains. They're insane. They're really insane. And the rivers in between them, the Red River here, some of these places are just incredibly beautiful. There's also a lot of dams, and they're building 19 new dams coming down basically through this part of China, and also they want part of Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam. They want to take control of these rivers as well, like the Mekong. But I mean, these are absolutely incredibly beautiful places, and a lot of them are built up on rivers. And I'm just trying to find it, yeah, examples of um, how lovely they are, even when they're pretty high in elevation. Then you get over into some of these regions, and again, another big city, always on rivers, of course. Uh, but I'm trying to find like just an example of what the lower land, the lowland, let's see here, of like a park, one of their national parks is, just to give you guys on these top three an idea of like what it looks like and how pretty it is in these regions. People, this is where you think of the people with the unfortunate, I mean, I guess it's true, but the Chinaman's hat out in the rice field with those giant limestone pillars. Also, this is where all those cave species, actually from the word China on the screen, middle of China, all the way down, 500 miles away, there's a network, 700 miles. It goes this way, it goes this way. It's kind of like a big Y, upside down Y. Like if it started, the handle started up by the word China, and then right around Guangzhou goes down to Kunming and Yunnan province, and then the other handle goes here. Well, there's those limestone caves where they found like over 100 species of actual. They're not just like, oh, it's a version of a fish that lives in a cave that also lives in this river. No, it's like an entire species of a fish that lives 200 miles in groundwater in limestone caves underneath like the entire valley floor of some of these areas. Absolutely incredible stuff. But I'll have to, I'm not going to spend forever on this. I should have had something ready with the picture to show you guys of a typical Yunnan. In fact, I'm sure I do in some of my other talks. But it is just trust me, it's a beautiful part of the world. And while it is all under Chinese control, they are very interested in cataloging and sharing and, I guess, promoting that they have these wonders. They're starting to understand the power of nature and ecotourism and the what that gives you, the sort of clout, I guess you would call it, that gives you. Okay, so number 2 on our list, finishing things up here, is going to be the Central African Republic up here. And really, it's following the Central African Republic where it meets with South Sudan. Very unfortunate how much war has gone on here. But if you follow these rivers that make up the borders and you come, from the Juba River, and over here you can see you've got the White Nile that then drains into Lake Albert here. And then over here, you got more Lake Kyoga, more of these big lakes. This is due to a dam the size of this lake. Then you got Lake Victoria, which is massive, probably the biggest surface area lake in the world if you don't count the Great Lakes as one lake. But again, it's that whole journey along here that is, if we zoom out, we got about 200 miles from Uganda over here to cross really the Northern Democratic Republic of Congo. Before we were talking about the actual stretch of the river at the mouth, and we did mention all the way over in here, and places like, we know there's a lot of diversity in the rivers here. We know there's 800, 900 species in the river on the Congo, but I mean, look at this. There's just not even streets. There's not anywhere there. Whereas up here, same thing. There's literally like towns, but there's not even a street to like guide you out here. So we go back to satellite mode. And we know lots of amazing little dwarf cichlids, unique cichlids that might only like brackish water, or might only like high iron or high rather hardness alkaline water. We see that going on also in Ethiopia, Kenya, specifically. We know that Lake Turkana, we've got the incredible jewel cichlids, or beautiful red cichlids that come from there. But there are these kind of unique minerals, and because it's such a place where we mentioned the rift is in Africa, there's kind of this northern end by South Sudan and the Central African Republic, or the CAR as it's known. And if we were to use the CAR as the center of exploration, as well as this river that leads down to the Rift Lakes, I think there's a lot to be discovered still here. This summer, Joe Coletti, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Actually traveled 3 different rivers, and he had a live feed with him to every couple of days stop and talk to Canada. Now he was supposed to talk to Channel 9 and to US students as well, I guess, but I think something happened with the funding. So he did still broadcast to the Canadian company or country and their like national broadcasting system, but it was incredible to see him holding up all the specimen jars. And it was kind of delayed because he was like out in the middle of nowhere. He did the Zambezi River down here, and then he also did the part of the Congo, and then I think what was the other one he did? I think it was this one, Mbomu River, I think. I'll have to double check on that, but it was one of the ones up in here, and it was just really cool to see like how excited he was. He also mentioned that down here in Angola, into Zambia, there's stuff that nobody has taken a boat down and sampled, and they kind of thought that they would know what would be down some of these rivers that go towards the desert and stuff. And they were like way off in some cases. There was way more diversity than they had expected. And some of these things, like during colonial rule, Zambia, Zimbabwe, these areas were known. The British were very heavily involved here. The Belgians, the Germans were very involved with Congo. So was a lot of European, Dutch too, and there were a lot of naturalists that came and documented things because it's like Eden. It's beautiful. But I just wanted to mention that is another area where we're undoubtedly going to find, interesting everything from, like tire track eel relatives or whatever, to who knows if we're going to find something like more mormyrids. There's probably like 100 mormyrids that we still don't know. Interesting weekly electric fish, things like bichers that we still don't know. We know that they exist all the way up in Senegal, the bichers, and all the way up into Mauritania. Lawrence Kent, he, like, while we mentioned these places earlier in the list, he went to Western Sahara and Mauritania and collected fish in both places. Even though he's a madman, that was really, really dangerous. He used to work in the Peace Corps, but he went to those places and he collected fish, and some of them nobody had a name for. He passed it all around European circles, and people were like, "Well, it's probably in the genus of maybe this or that, but and it's a cichlid or it's a this or that, but we don't really know." Yeah, that doesn't really quite fit, And there's people doing this all over the world, and now with the internet and more YouTube and more universities and people being fluent in the internet and using social media and using Instagram and using tagging these places, tagging these fish, and people who are interested in aquascaping that live in Congo, for instance, even if they live in Kinshasa, where there's some middle class, not much, but there's some upper class all over Africa, and there's some middle class. You may have people, though, on the internet communicating with people at universities, scientists, people all over the world. And so now we're putting together that. We're putting together echoes from the past, like interesting archives, like I was talking about. The Green Earth Alliance and Ivan Mikolji and I are trying to get everything digitized and photographed from all the mason jars and all the samples in Venezuela that are literally falling apart. And we're trying to get those digitized, if not 3D scanned and things like that, would be even cooler. And then, have that as a database that can live on, because a lot of these fish, we try and try and try, and we try to go back and find them in a lot of different countries, and we can never find like that exact fish. Or maybe we find something that matches it anatomically pretty closely, but maybe there's 2 fin rays extra and the pattern's different. It's like, that's enough to be like, that's probably a different species. It's probably in the genus of whatever we collected, nearby, or whatever we found in modern day, but it's not that. Okay, so number 1 on our list, the final countdown. Where you guys think it's going to be? The whole world. We spent a lot of time, right on these coastal, or right on these equatorial, give or take 20 degrees, hanging out on the green zones here of the lush areas. All right. Well, my final pick, for all the reasons we've talked about this entire episode: war, narco state, conflict. It used to be run by the British Empire. Then it fell apart when it was handed over to ethnic control. Then there's been ethnic fights between both different ethnic groups. Some live on the river and are, nomadic, essentially. Some live as farmers. Others live in cities and villages and are, raising livestock, living sedentary for thousands of years in massive temple complexes. We are talking about the Golden Triangle region, and really Laos. I mean, we found a giant deer, like it looked like a miniature giraffe mixed with a tapir, and yet nobody expected that. Yet Laos, even with the Vietnam War, even with colonial powers being there, is such a poor country and such a mountainous country, such a wet country, and so thickly forested that there are mammals and reptiles still surprising us there. So if there are still megafauna mammals coming out of a region, that fish could easily hide. And when we talk about the Golden Triangle, we're really talking about everywhere. And it's kind of, we kind of cheated because Yunnan province used to kind of get sucked into this. Now China has really firmed up a lot of their border control. Although this region up here, when you come all the way north and you get into a Karen state or Karen state of Myanmar, it is semi-autonomous. And you can see here, like, this is also Nguyen Lisu Autonomous Prefecture. Like, what does that mean? It's weird. These, again, here's another autonomous prefecture. So it is kind of this lawless ethno-state area in this area, but we were specifically talking more about the limestone and then the stuff that was temperate to subtropical when we talked about Southeast China, and then all the way to tropical at the sea. And then over here, we're talking about absolutely tropical, thick Thai jungle, Myanmar jungle. This is Lake Inle territory. Lake Inle alone is one of my favorite diversity spots in the world. There are 56 fish found in Lake Inle, native species, and my entire state of Washington doesn't have that many fish in it, diversity-wise. But things like the CPD, the Celestial Pearl Daniel, the Rummy Nose Rasbora, or the Sabua Resplendens. Things like the Lake Inlay Danio, things like the Erythromicron or Emerald Dwarf Rasbora, which is not a good name because it's not a Rasbora, whatever, not really emerald either. But the red tail Lake Inlay catfish, the Sundadanios, which again, we talked about Sundadanios all the way when we were talking about stuff out here, right? Well, Sundadanios continue all the way up into here. And if we followed a little bit bigger than our Texas size region, I mean, you could include this area of India is really pretty unknown too. This mountainous region here. Once you get into these valleys and things, all bets are kind of off with the smaller size fish. We probably have the main large fish, you know, over 6 inches a foot. We probably have all those genuses roughly fleshed out, and they're not going to be massive surprises, you know, of some huge fish anywhere in the world other than maybe the Amazon and here. It's still possible here and up the Mekong, coming up the other side of, well, basically coming up this whole peninsula here. But basically, yeah, you've got your you've got the real massive Brahmaputra River that goes all the way up and around, and again, that comes out, and even though it is up here in India, it is, I mean, when you think of the people who live in Bangladesh living on those boats, and there's literally like thousands of people packed together in these boat communities at the mouths of rivers, and then there'll be a city also right there. I mean, here you can see thousands of boats right on the creeks, or right on the creek. What did I say, creek? It's a massive river. But yeah, and it's, you know, all these areas also have an old ancient history. They have agriculture going back 10,000 plus years. I mean, probably 15,000 years, right to the same as the Fertile Crescent age. And so lush, so mountainous, so many micro regions, and such strife. And also now we get everything from diamond mining to ruby and sapphire mines, to gold mining, to the illicit growth of poppies, to communist revolutionaries trying to influence Southeast Asia, to Muslim extremists, to Buddhist ultranationalists, which sounds insane if you haven't studied the region. But yeah, there are dictators that use Buddhism as their main religion of control. But again, I mean, this golden triangle, there's so much coming out of here. And in 06, we had like the first big opening in the 20th century, or 21st century rather, of info coming out. Lake Inlay, we had like hundreds of new species coming out of the Shan State and the Karen State and the Wa State and Shan. You know, and all the way up here, like, yeah, Chiang Mai is a well-traveled, well-known place. But just getting from Chiang Mai to like Mae Hong Son, that is you can't drive. You're going to have to take a helicopter. Okay, guys? Even though it's like 28 miles or whatever over mountains, there just is not a path unless a river goes there. And then usually a road will follow the river. There's just all these little fingers that are dead ends. And with the monsoon season, all these little fingers flood, you know, some more than others. Some turn into like a series of lakes and a series of oxbow rivers that are just braided and all over the place. And sometimes they'll actually come together and like touch each other, two different rivers, and connect, and then they'll, you know, again, for a million years go their separate ways and carve into a new direction. It's absolutely fascinating what goes on in this quote unquote golden triangle. Now it was named that due to the green stuff and the poppies that were grown here mostly. Now, though, the illegal go fast ice in the jungle is being made here by the billions of doses, more than Mexico, more than anywhere, to fuel China and Japan and Taiwan and Korea. Those stimulants are seen as acceptable. And unfortunately, that also brings the border in these areas more chaos. Also, the government's crackdown, they've been getting assistance from the Chinese government more directly again. And if it's not the Chinese government, then it's either the US or the Russian. Usually there's one side playing another side. Unfortunately, the people in Myanmar have paid the price every time. And whether it's, you want to talk about the Rohingya people and, you know, the Muslim versus Buddhist like ethnic problem and the over 1 million people displaced, that's going on more up here. There's a lot of issues in this region that have displaced people, and those have reverberations that then, you know, affect the economy, affect the quality of life, that bring in things like NGOs. And then when war happens, a lot of times those things get forced out, and basically they just give over control to whoever's there. But things like research and stuff kind of just go by the wayside. And the only thing that's getting done collection wise is hardcore adventurers or people who know the region, like their families ethnically from there. And, you know, nowadays everybody's modern. Everyone's got a cell phone, no matter how remote. But, you know, maybe only a few people in these remote areas have the money to then come back and share their trips and things with us. But, you know, Lake Inle was quite the tourist spot for a long time. Same with Yangon, which I would consider firmly in the golden or green, sometimes it's called, but golden triangle. And it's kind of been a mysterious region for a long time. Civilizations have disappeared, risen, become massive, like Angkor Wat, and then just disappeared from this area. Same with some of the ancient Chinese stuff. Same with some of the ancient Indian stuff. So anyways, really fascinating, tons of diversity, and the whole world undoubtedly, as now we went down the list. And I'm going to give you guys one last rundown. I'm gonna look y'all in the face, because I know that's a lot of talking. It's a lot of talking that we just went through, if you made it through. And hopefully that was like a nice audio podcast, you know, for y'all who are interested in a nice listen. But at number 10 on our list, we had Bamako, Mali, or we had the Sahel region of where Africa turns from savanna and desert in the Sahara Desert to the more grasslandy and then downright tropical, you know, region of when you come into the rivers like the Niger River and that area in Mali, and then, you know, Burkina Faso and Guinea and all those places like Sierra Leone. A lot of diversity there, a lot of instability, and we've gotten a peak, then gotten kicked out, gotten in, gotten a peak, gotten kicked out. Now, number 9, we had the island of Borneo, 3 nations on one island, getting developed at an extremely, extremely fast rate. And the natives are also being trampled there by foreign companies. Generally, Chinese are the ones that are getting accused with things like massacres as recent as a year ago, with some of the tribal people that still are very secluded. Now, they're not cut off or like undiscovered there, but Papua New Guinea is pretty darn close, and Borneo is like right up there with it on the interior there. So number 8, we had the south of Colombia and that kind of Ecuador border area, but everything that used to be FARC and ELN controlled all through the narco years, and also during like the fruit years when those countries all the way up through Panama and the Darien Gap, you've got basically robber barons. You've got a few very, very rich people controlling the land and everyone else kind of living off of it. And there are hubs of cities that have a middle class and kind of this life off and on throughout the 20th century, but not until very recently do we really see like that spreading. And finally, some of these areas that used to be downright deadly for anyone to visit, opening up to visitors and being managed properly by fish and wildlife in that country and academic research and the scientists that care about and live in that country. Also, after that, we had the Peruvian and Paraguay and like the other side of the Chilean and Andean gap, the south side of the Amazon. And then we had and basically it's just remote. It's where there's a lot of remoteness. And then if you get out of that, people are expecting that where all these uncontacted tribes are, we're going to find a bunch of fish we've never seen before. But that what do you call it? That ecosystem is a giant jungle. And while the space and the branching of rivers will give us diversity, it is fairly similar habitat. So we may see different collection points, color morphs, things like that. We probably won't find anything crazy new in a giant biome or biotope that's connected and largely the same, because the fish haven't had to adapt way differently. But when we get into areas where the temperature's changing, the elevation's changing, and it's still a high biodiversity region, where we get that tropic or kind of Mediterranean subtropic, savanna, safari vibe, energy. That's where we can get things like the Pantanal, or we also mentioned the Guianan shield. So there's a lot of hope for finding new species there. Also, we need to preserve these areas because they're getting torched and torn down pretty quickly as well. But as we continue from there, we had the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Zambezi, the center of the Congo down to the south, the inner heart of the Volta and the deep Congo. But we also mentioned that there are some uncharted fish that just recently we've brought aquatic drones to at the mouth of the river that go deeper than any other river in the world, 900 feet or 300 meters deep in the river. And interesting, like at waterfalls and some of these rivers in Africa, they have this kind of continental shelf that drops, and when that occurs, there's a big series of they call them cataracts usually in Africa, but basically rapids and then waterfalls, like stepped waterfalls. And those are another feature in the land, elevation change, that can bring really specialized and interesting fish. And we'll find a lot of times some of the new fish that have been most recently talked about are at places like the waterfalls and at these continental shelf breaks. Okay, from there we had Papua New Guinea, which is the other island next to Borneo. That has all the rainbow fish. That has a lot of the international investment. Unfortunately, even more Chinese going on there, pretty exclusively Chinese development, whereas Indonesian and whereas Borneo has Canadian, American, European, you name it. Papua New Guinea is still seen as such an unwieldy place that China kind of brings in its entire society, like 5,000 people. They'll bring in a city, armed guards, police, the way they would run things in any town in China or whatever. And they bring in workers, they bring in, they even bring in like people who ask for visas and things. And a lot of times Papua New Guinea doesn't care. They don't control anything. They have like one town on the coast that matters at all, like Port Moresby. And that's where like there are a couple, government offices and headquarters where the tribes meet. But basically, they'll pay off some of the tribal representatives there and then set up, and then they kind of have free reign, unfortunately. But yeah, so there's a lot to hopefully still find there. And hopefully, as China is globalized, I hope that some of their policies change from being quite so just stripping the land bare and not caring what is going on behind. Now, you could say the same for American and Western companies. We've done that with mining and minerals for a long time as well, and we just try to hide our tracks, legally speaking, a little more obviously, whereas they don't. So the next place we talked about, number 4 on our list, was the Western Ghat Mountains of India. Absolutely beautiful. Everything from Goa down to Kerala. Really beautiful, very wet, humid jungle. And very big changes in elevation. Again, very high population, lots of national parks, which is great, but lots of experts in the country as well that are interested in going, and universities that will pay for them to explore and bring back info on these places, which is just as important in the long run. Okay, then our top 3 were Southeast China, and that lobe of China that is tropical up into, as it gains elevation and you get into Yunnan province and you get into more center of temperate China. As that transition occurs, as the elevation changes, lots of interesting things like the panda loaches and interesting little hovering loaches and all sorts of bitterlings and minnows and little darters or gobies and things like that. Lots of stuff being discovered as we speak. Some of it of a pretty good size that was just called by the locals like, lunch. And some of them are, a foot-long fish. Same with the cave system there, the massive karst limestone cave system, the biggest massive, as it's called, a giant piece of the continent, all alkaline limestone. And there are caves all the way down to the bedrock underneath the mountains. There are rivers under the rivers, and it's very beautiful there. But very, very intense cave ecosystems that also are just showing us a ton of new species. Okay, number 2 was going to be the Central African Republic, and following that all the way into the Rift Lakes. We said a lot about that already. Lots of diversity. Cichlids, catfish, mormyrids, electrical fish. Mormyrids maybe some of the smartest fish in the world. Their biggest brain to body and energy size there is. Plus, they're an electrical fish that can communicate essentially telepathically with electromagnetic waves, pulses, and just absolutely bonkers stuff. And we need to study them. We can't let that disappear. Also, the last one, number 1, is the Golden Triangle, which butts up right onto that Chinese side. But really, we're talking about Myanmar. We're talking about Assam, northern Bangladesh, a little bit of Thailand, Laos. Everything that has been ungovernable for eons there, and tropical and mountainous, just tons of little nano fish that are beautiful, very diverse, and these valleys that are just, thousands and thousands of valley after valley after valley, and no way to get there other than the people who walked there originally to settle, thousands of years ago. And some of them live right on the side of a steep hill, doing rice farming or doing, farming yams and, lentils. Like, you don't think of that there, but that goes on just like in the Andes, stuff like that. So I hope you enjoyed this list. It, of course, just my list. We went over why I picked what I did and why I think, things like AI or things like any Google lists where you try to find where are the most new species being found are going to be really biased and not accurate. But these places are regions about the size of Texas or France that basically keep yielding brand new fish, not just taxonomically or for the sake of a name change or genetically, but definitely are separate genetically, not just a clarification. These are all new species, all new looking species, exciting stuff that everyone would agree, that's a new species. Now we're still excited to clarify taxonomy and to reshuffle old species that are known, make it clear what's what. That's why we had to redo all the Corridoras and Tetras and Rasboras several times over and over and over, and Crebensis. But yes, land of the snakeheads, the Dario, the Battis, the Danios, so much to find there in that final spot. But finally, might find some of the only big fish left to find, like over a foot long still out there. So guys, that is the talk. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll say ending point right around 2 hours and 1 minute. If you guys had any burning questions or comments, let me know. Also, I see a chat from eBoy TBR. Thank you so much. I said I'd address these when I saw them after the fact, but also I see a lot of members in here. So thank you so much, all y'all, for coming by and for chatting and with each other. Sorry, I wasn't interactive per se. I just knew I didn't want to post a 2-hour episode, and I definitely didn't want to edit the footage for 2 hours of episode because I wouldn't have been able to find, more than static pictures of fish. Like here's 6 of the fish that we found here, and that would have just been up the whole time. So I think it's a little more fun to scroll the map and hopefully, just listen along too and do it this way. So I hope you enjoyed that. But a lot of research went into it, and I hope you got something out of it. I had fun talking about it. Also, Robert, thank you so much. Robert J. Clary, we got another super chat there. Really do appreciate that. Again, I am not just saying thanks to the super chatters. I'm also saying thank you so much to all the members that are in here, from FR Haber to Moteb 208, USMC, Jacob, Posilia Man. I mean, I see so many folks in here. Somebody I used to know, Luke, good to see you. First Class Fish, what's up? Mick, of course, Amy, George, Protocol Aquarist is still here. What's going on? Good to see everybody who's still here. Asya, good to see you as well. Yeah, I hope folks like this. If you did enjoy this one, please share it, because this is a pretty deep dive. This is probably a deeper dive than you ever get in an episode. But again, not the most flashy to watch. But I wanted to try it out and see what you guys think. So if this is something that works, and for me, like I said, with my health, I've been having a really hard time getting these big deep dives like edited and put together and then pared down to a manageable size. And then knowing that when I post it, not that many people may see it, not because of money, but just because of the people that I want to see it won't get alerted. It makes me so sad, and it really deflates some of the energy momentum that I had. Now I know I just need to suck it up and get over all of that and keep going and push through. And we're going to, we're going to get back with the ball rolling on that stuff. And I have a species spotlight. Plus, haven't done anything new or different with the new aquascape still coming along. we got a lot to still cover and talk about on the channel. Unfinished business. We have some special guests and things that are in the works. So I'm really excited about what we've got set up for the near future. I just need to get back on the, weekly content or twice weekly content pattern of posted stuff. I'm also thinking about doing more of the hyper-focused deep dive shorts, if that makes sense. So they're not deep dives in any sense, really, but they're maybe something like uh, scientific findings or articles or a new species that we just don't know that much about, but it's everything that we do know. That could fit into 3 to 5 minute kind of heavy infographic type shorts. But I agree that 15 to 25-minute videos are what I always liked, one at a time. And I hope, to get back to kind of that goal of being able to provide a deep dive at this point in time, if you're watching, because of all the data and info and pictures and videos, the multimedia you can put on the screen while I'm talking about something related but slightly different. That is something coming in the channel that I hope is also continues. I continue to get better and continue to promise you guys I'm working on that. And my research for all this stuff has never stopped. So even if my output of top 10 fish to pair with your betta, those kind of videos and stuff have come out like once every 8 days or something now, or once every 10 days. I do want to get back to a busier point with that again, but we'll have to see how the balance goes with everything. But when you guys like something, the bottom line is let me know. And just let me know in the comments, let me know in the video, and or message me even and say like, hey, there's something about whatever you did this with this, or you know what, Alex, I don't like that style. Like, don't do that. That's fine too. I respect all of that. And I really do care about your thoughts, opinions, and the direction of everything. Again, if you enjoyed this, share it with a friend, send it to somebody you think is going to be stuck in traffic for 2 hours tomorrow and wants to hear about the places fish will be without me interrupting it to sing or to play with a cat or to wander around ADDing about this, that, or the other. But I'm going to end it there so that we don't have too much beyond just the focus of today's episode. And I hope you guys like this little extra fish club talk, as I'm calling it, that is more research-wise, like the kind of thing I would go to a club and talk about, and hopefully probably would have more slides. But this is the nature of this episode kind of made it hard because a lot of the fish, we have like 1 or 2 kind of bad pictures of like a dead specimen and that's all we know about them. Like usually this info will be published in the coming years, the ones that we're talking about just being mentioned and described or noted right now. So yeah, all right, you guys. All right, Mick says he hears a song for you from Europe, The Final Countdown. Here's a new video and song from them with loads of Swedish well-known athletes and artists. All right, cool. Yeah, if you guys are interested in that, that's right over there in the chat right now. Love all of you guys in the chat, my friends. Oh, I wish I didn't have this stupid thing scrolling on this bottom of the screen the whole time. But if you do want to check out some awesome fish, including some of these new fish, that banner has been rolling the whole time, probably annoying everybody. I apologize. Also, I apologize if ads popped up. I put it on like not to pop up to be in the middle, but only at the far ends. And I know that's not that doesn't work. That for some people that holds true, and for others it doesn't. But I'm trying. I'm also going to try this new program that YouTube wants me to like enlist in and give them feedback as a creator of a niche topic with high engagement, like a lot of a lot of y'all, thank you for this, but a lot of y'all stay and watch live streams and chat, and like per capita, we have very high engagement, and it's because we're nerds, we're fish people. But have a wonderful night, everybody. Take care of the fish you have. Take care of the plants you have. Take care of the people around you. Oh, you have so much to take care of. So first, take care of yourself, of course, you guys. And then you can show up for those who need you. So with much love, and thank you for your time. Have fun. And I will talk to you guys a little later, probably on Friday. I hope you guys have a good one, and take care. Love each other. Bye.